Hi, I'm Dr. Chelsea, and today we are talking about the research on screen time. I know for so many families, screen time is just such a hot button issue. It's like, what do we do about it? How do we manage it? What if you're just exhausted and you put your kid on the screen? Is that okay? When is that okay? So listen, each of your children is an individual. Okay, so what that says to me is that yes, the research is so important to sort of know and to think about and to work with. And you are making decisions for your individual child. And so take this as sort of a backdrop and then think about where does your particular kiddo fall. And in the next several videos on screens, you'll get more, we'll get deeper and deeper. But for today, we're really just talking about what the research says. So one question I get from a lot of families is how much screen time is okay? Okay, so before age 2, the research is very strong that we want to avoid all screens. Okay, so if you've got a baby or a young toddler, I would super encourage you to get the screens out of your child's viewing if and when possible. Okay, so for my twins, for example, my first children, they did not watch TV until pretty well over 2. For my youngest child, the older ones were already watching some screens and doing some stuff on screens. And so she had a little bit of exposure earlier, but I did do what I could to sort of limit it or move her to another room or do something else with her if they were doing screens. So if you can, really good idea to limit all screens or just do no screens at least until age 2. Okay, so in older kids, well, let's just talk about sort of the 2 to 5. So 2 to 5, if you can continue to go screen free, awesome. If you can't, that's okay too. So what might that look like? Maybe you've had a rough day, you're cooking dinner, you put a show on for your kids to watch. It's fine. Do I want your kids on the screen all the time? Not really. And limiting it is okay. We're trying to get on a track towards screen positive relationships. So I want your child to be able to get on and off in ways that are work for the family, that are easy. I want your child to experience screens in ways that are highly interactive. So if you watch a show with your child, that is rad. If you talk to your child about the show, that is awesome. We're going for high interactivity. So the research on older kids, kind of like 5 and up, is pretty mixed. And you know, what we do know is that for your specific child, you really want to attune to them and do what works for them. So what we do know about the research in older kids is that interactivity is critical. So what is interactivity? Interactivity means higher levels of engagement. And what I mean by that is that I want to shoot for screen experiences that are co-viewing. So if I watch the show with my child or my children watch together and then do something with it, interactivity is the reason why, like in younger kids shows, you might hear a character ask a question and then there's a space. So some of those shows are built for interactivity, right? The idea is that they ask a question and then they leave a space and the child answers. So if you have a kiddo who's watching something like that, like Sesame Street has a lot of pauses like that, maybe your child is jumping up and down with the characters and then there's a pause and then your child answers the question. That's what they were going for, and that is interactivity. It's even better if that interactivity is particular to your child. So of course, being on FaceTime with a relative or that kind of, like, you know, if you've got a grandparent reading on FaceTime to your child, that is awesome. Great way to develop the relationship if you've got relatives that live far away. And high levels of interactivity, right? Because the person on the other side of the screen is responding directly to your child. Now let's talk about other kinds of interactivity. So if you've got an older kid who's playing games, there is some good research on games that would suggest that there are some qualities in some games that are great for our kids, right? So That would be games that have, for example, other kids playing them, right? Or there's levels and you have to sort of go through the levels and try to beat your previous score. So what we know about that is in those settings, a lot of kids have high levels of resiliency. They want to try and try and try again, even if they have failed. So that has some positive impact on them. Now, you know you have a problem if they have a tough time getting off of those games. But just noticing that interactivity is really, really important. Other ways to do interactivity: schedule a movie night. And have your whole family watch the movie together. Watch a show, and say you are watching a show with 2 kids and your child has had a tough time navigating friendships at school. Pause the show and talk about with your child, what do you think is going to happen next? What could that friend say to that friend? How could they make a new friend? What could he do if he doesn't have any friends? So you're taking whatever experience your child is having and putting it onto the character on the screen. You could do that with toddlers. You can do that around sharing, around making friends, around behaving appropriate. Around anything, really. You can also do that with older kids. So if you've got an older kid who's maybe navigating some tough social dynamics, or is thinking about social justice, or is asking big questions about the world, watch a documentary together and pause it and talk about it. Right? So think about what the different endings could be. If you have a child who is having a hard time, like with comprehension or with linking things together, great. You can work on those skills by just pausing anything, a show, or even a book if you're reading a book, and asking what they think might happen next. Or you could check for understanding what just happened. What did you think about that? So you're creating opportunities for engagement, for high levels of interactivity. Now, if you have an older kid, I think you can do this, and I super encourage you to do this, and I know it's a bit vulnerable, with games also. Okay, so what that is co-playing. So we just talked about co-viewing, which is literally watching something together, but you can also co-play, and it's quite delightful, right? So what happens if you're going to co-play, like with your young teen or your older elementary schooler? They have an opportunity to teach you this game that they're playing. So you got to hit pause and just decide you're going to go head first into your adolescent's game or your big kids game. Okay, learn it, play it, compete with them, watch what they do, figure out what's going on, right? And be part of it. So just drop all assumptions and let them be in the driver's seat of teaching you. That's co-playing. You can do that with screens, with other screens too. So co-viewing, right? Another big piece of this is modeling your own screen time. And this is as true for really little kids as it is true for big kids. So if you are anything like me, when you get on your phone and start texting and you have a child who says to you, "Mama, mama, mama," or "Hey, I need help with my homework," or "Mama, I want a popsicle," or "She's hit me," or whatever, you might not hear it, because when we get on a screen, something happens to our brain, right? So there's a lot of research on the way that being on a screen impacts our brain, right? Sometimes it kind of lights up one section and it turns off other sections. So the way that happens for me as a mom is that sometimes I don't hear what my children are asking of me when I'm on a screen. And so I want to check my own usage, because modeling is the most powerful thing that I can do around screens or in just about any parenting thing. Okay, so I want to check that, and maybe I'm going to do something like, say, from 5 to 7 is a screen-free zone for the whole family, right? So then I'm going to maybe decide, okay, all cell phones, mine included, go up on the shelf. iPads go on the shelf. Computers are plugged in. TV is off. Okay, so during that time, I'm going to check it that way. Or maybe I'm going to say, I'm out with my child. I'm going to get any important messages on my iWatch and on my Apple Watch, and everything else I'm going to let go. Or maybe I'm going to say, no, I really need to respond to catch emails that come in during this period. So I'm going to give myself some grace. And I might say to my kid, you know what? Mama has to check emails for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'll be right with you. Right? And then I'm gonna put a timer on it so that I track for myself when those 10 minutes are up. Because what happens, at least for me, maybe not for you, but what happens for many of us is that we go into emails and it's like a black hole. You can just go down that route and stay there forever. And then your child experiences your 10 minutes as never ending. And that can be really damaging to the relationship and to their capacity to learn how to wait, which is such an important skill for, especially for our little ones, right? To learn. So take note of your own screen time. Notice the way that it impacts your brain, and also know that there's lots of research on the way that screens impact the brain and what happens. Just like how I was able to tune out my child who was asking for something she needed during my screen time when I was texting with my friend or answering my emails. When she's on a screen, or when she's on my phone or an iPad or playing a game, the same thing happens. So I might tell her it's time to come to dinner, screens are done, and she might be tuning that out. And so then what happens is that I get more and more frustrated, right? And I set myself up for a storm, right? Because I'm getting more frustrated and she's tuning me out because of the way the screen is impacting her brain. So we're going to talk over the next couple of videos about how to disrupt that, how to get in there, help her close the screen experience so then she can tend to you. And I love thinking about brain-based way, the brain, right? How can we parent with brain-based tools and the knowledge that we have, which is that screens result in our children becoming hyper attuned to what they're doing, and it becomes, for many children, really hard to disengage, if not impossible, not possible to cooperate when they're doing that because of what's going on in their brain. They need other parts of their brain to come back online before they can close that activity, tend to you, and follow directions. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next couple of videos. So just know we can work this out. If you've got under twos, toss the screens if at all possible. Give yourself grace where you can't. If you've got under fives, go for a very little amount, and be intentional about where you put it. That intentionality is so important. So you might say, we're going to watch one show before dinner and you're going to cook during that time, or we're going to watch family movie night on every Saturday. You get to pick. Next week is my week, right? There's lots of fun ways to do it. If you've got bigger kids, research is quite mixed. Go for high interactivity, participate with your kids, and we will talk in the next couple of videos about how to diagnose a screen time issue. There's no right answer for families, right? It's so particular. I can't tell you exactly what the right screen time amount is for your family. It's going to be particular to your beliefs about screens, your particular child and their profile, what's okay for your family, whether you've got multiples, what your kids' interests are, what your interests are. We will get there. I look forward to sharing more with you about screens. For now, go ahead and download this PDF so that you can really sort of start to think in your family and with any co-parents that you are living with, working with, parenting with, a little bit more about the research on screens.